that would please her more, although she was never happy about having a home of our own, for it apparently meant having become materialistic. However, I decided to buy a home discreetly, as with everything I was forced to do, just discreetly. Was I not always on the wrong side, contrary to the supposed righteousness of Jehovah's Witnesses in an evil world? They had to be the just ones, unlike me who belonged to that outside world. Call it justice in pretense, if you like. If you are familiar with Martin Luther King, you might appreciate his words of wisdom. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. I kept working part-time in the coffee shop in partnership with the original proprietor, while spending time furthering my study in the subjects I had chosen, with the prospect of taking a position as a lecturer or research assistant until I was recognized as a professor doctor, but I would probably need to be subjected to additional courses to achieve the Australian standard. I was not prepared to wait until the 1990s. Occasionally, my English friend, the original owner of the coffee lounge, and his Egyptian mother sat down and had long discussions with me over cups of coffee. We were becoming very friendly with many patrons of the business. One such person came, looked at some of my paintings intently, and told me he was keenly interested in all of them, but he wanted his family to see them first. He asked if he could borrow a few of them to show his wife and others, and bring them back the next morning after the weekend. But he did not bring them back for many days, and when contacted, he had many excuses. At one time, his wife was sick. In a different time, somebody had died, and one other time, he had car problems. And every time he was telling me over the phone that he was on his way with my paintings in his vehicle. Some people were very curious, asking if we had sold all my paintings, while my English friend was not happy seeing empty walls. We notified the police and discovered he was known to them. I even drew his image for the detectives concerned. A long time passed, and finally the police, although not hopeful at first, contacted us saying that they had found my paintings, and the person in question was trying to sell them on the roadside somewhere distant. They called us to their office. On one side my paintings were leaning against the wall. On the other was the person they had arrested and handcuffs. A close inspection revealed that he had painted over my signatures and signed his own name. Since oil paint takes a while to dry, and his signatures were not quite dry, by wiping them with a piece of cloth, I revealed my own signatures and pointed to my unique secret markings to prove the authenticity of those works. Then the police asked if I wanted to lay charges against him. Without hesitation, I decided to forgive him as long as he apologized publicly and in writing. Some officers were none too pleased with my decision. However, as they soon discovered, I was intending to teach that person a lesson he would never forget. I remember the very wise words of Horace. He wins every hand who mingles profit with pleasure by delighting and instructing the reader at the same time. Maybe I was mingling justice with pleasure and instructing the needy to learn something for life. The detective in charge of that case later thanked me, as he and his companion often enjoyed cups of coffee and snacks in the coffee shop, admiring my paintings. I cannot forget how frightened that unfortunate person was when in court. his eyes desperately begging for my forgiveness. How sad it is that some people go to such extremes and get hurt in the process. Much later, that miserable man met me asking for my forgiveness again. And I told him that there was nothing to forgive, and all was forgotten, hoping that he had learnt an important lesson in life. I was not going to pursue any furtherance in friendship with him, without making it obvious. I had more important things to worry about. However, while Magda's pregnancy was advancing, the original proprietor of the coffee shop was beginning to experience financial hardship and suggested that I should take over the entire business. I had a long conversation with Magda about it, explaining that such a business would be nice and helpful for her and the children later in life if we could develop it further. But she had very unusual viewpoints about life. She had an I am alive now, and that is all I need to worry about mentality. Tomorrow was so distant, and she did not feel the importance to consider it. Remember, Armageddon is just around the corner, and tomorrow is in the hands of Jehovah. There's a very beautiful quote, which I fondly recall. When opportunity knocks at the door, most people are out in the backyard looking for four-leaf clovers. She repeated herself again. I do not want to be materialistisch. For the time being, there were other issues to consider, and so the best move could only be to sell the business. Furthermore, my English friend and his mother elected to declare the business bankrupt. He preferred to get a different job. Before his application was accepted, I was out. I was informed that the sold business was renamed as Chit Chat. However, I was not absolutely certain about the truthfulness of this. I concentrated on paying another large portion of the mortgage on the house I was going to surprise Magda with. Alas, she stubbornly kept singing the same old song. I don't want to be materialistic. I don't want to be materialistic. It was blatantly obvious that she was convinced that having some income or having a house meant being materialistic. And that worried her a lot, in case she may not be able to survive the end of the world with her children and live forever with her so-called brothers and sisters in the new world. Remember, the money spent on trivial things on this side of Armageddon would be wasted, and it was far better to use it for kingdom interests. I felt completely stuck in the groove, or as if being thrown into a dungeon with a ball and chain attached to my ankles. I decided to continue with my endeavors without telling her anything. Whenever she interrogated me with her endless queries in regard to my remaining faithful to her and her God Jehovah, I remained extremely cautiously neutral with my answers. For example, I would not tell her about my involvement in a choir. I could never tell her about my part in operatic singing, and could never talk to her about my need to practice with those groups of professionals. First of all, she could never imagine that I could sing and be a part of sinful worldly interests, and secondly, she never would have time or any desire to listen to me, always preferring to be busy with other things which were more important to her when I needed to practice. Whenever Magda and the children discovered me appearing in advertisements, surprisingly, she never questioned me about it. She could not accept me being an intellectual, an artistic person, needing to perform and be appreciated. I suppose those things were too worldly for her to even consider. I was expected to be just a simple man, interest-only work, looking after the family, and only have an interest in witnessing activities as seen fit by the Watchtower and Tract Society. We Jehovah's Witnesses must never be a part of the wicked world. A number of witnesses agonize about their family members doing the devil's bidding. Even Michael Jackson and his siblings seemed to have caused much stress to their strict disciplinarian Jehovah's Witness parents. Magda and I had also been discussing what we should name our children if they were born girls or boys. Since her first one was named Annette Samuela, and take note of her middle name, which was after Magda's stepfather, second one could follow the next letter of the alphabet and be called Birgit. "Oh, but," she said, "one of my relatives' names is Katerina, and so I want her middle name to be that." But what could we call the child if we had a boy? In this case, the third child's name we could call with the third letter of the alphabet, starting with C. It could be Claude. And if a girl, Claudia, I said, and she immediately reacted to my suggestion, saying, No, I do not want another one. 2 is enough." In the circumstances, having no children would have been far better, but the experience of having children was fantastic. Since we had been following the phases of the moon and certain days of the month, we theorized that one could roughly determine the sex of the children. When the second child was born, a girl, if we had a chance to have another child, provided we had 2 or 3 years between them, I was determined to have a boy as the next one. In fact, I was certain that the third one was going to be a boy, and we were going to call him Claude, with the middle name of Suren, like my first name. Strangely enough, it was Magda who first suggested this middle name. I also suggested that it would be better to have our children during the early and mid-1970s, and not wait too long. She was uncertain if she should consider a third one. Even this she needed to talk with her faithful brothers about, and if they approved, she would not worry. They were very encouraging, probably even hoping to have yet another addition to their numbers. I believed that it was possible, by ardently willing to have a male or female child, during copulation, both parents could have the desired result, for the thoughts would eventually influence the fatal sequences and DNA-related elements to produce the gender they have concentrated upon, or we could concentrate on X or Y chromosomes. Thoughts are a form of energy which can influence the material world on a molecular level. People can also heal their ills with thought alone, and this has been proven through scientific observation. I wanted to put this theory to test. I have been successful in concentrating my thoughts on tasks ahead, and Magda has been able to establish similar energy levels through what she popularly engaged in, namely prayer. She regarded it as her prayers being answered. However, she could not see it as being the concentration of her thoughts. And yet, her actions in thought would not be any different. Concentrated thought energy. Since we have engaged in this kind of experiment, and quite successfully, I was happy with the results. Our second child was a girl, and the third child a boy. Then again, the whole experiment may just have been coincidental. Besides, according to Magda, we had to be vigilant about issues concerning thought in case Satan interfered with our minds. When my partnership in that coffee lounge abruptly ended, dreams of having an additional source of income for our children's future was gone until another opportunity presented. As I said, Magda never agreed in becoming materialistic on this side of Armageddon, because in the new world we were apparently going to have everything without the need for any money, and so for now we did not need to worry about anything other than kingdom interests. However, I needed to occupy myself with materialistic matters. I tried my hands at selling Encyclopedia Britannica house to house and found it to be a little too slow moving. Then I tried selling real estate through A.V. Jennings. Having sold a few acres of land for residential purposes, a few houses in distant suburbs, and newly developed sites, I realized the necessity of having a reliable car. But my university engagements carried more weight on my decisions. One Italian veteran salesperson suggested reserving a real estate lot for later development to grow vegetables, fruit trees, or an animal farm in the eastern Victorian countryside. The idea was fantastic, but how could one tend it without farming or animal husbandry experience, although it could be a great investment property? I could be interested to build on it later, but needed to spend much time on research and lecturing as well, apart from my part-time studies. Therefore, there was not much time to waste with the witnesses, and it was going to cause great displeasure from Magda. Maybe I needed to divide myself into a number of pieces, or make several clones of me, but that was simply impossible. A short while later, I was involved in yet another suitable job involving the electronics industry with BJD Electronics Company in North Melbourne. It did not interfere with my academic engagements, for which I was very happy. I tested sound equipment, loudspeakers, amplifiers, and record players, utilizing very sophisticated equipment. I thoroughly enjoyed the experience and decided to build my own loudspeakers and a powerful sound system in my spare time, using the test instruments there. The time came, and I proudly had them delivered to our home. Unfortunately, once again, hell broke loose. I was excited to have something I worked very hard for. I was excited to share the experience of listening to music with Magda, but she was extremely furious about me wasting time and, most importantly, money on such trivial and stupid endeavors. Once again, I felt like a guilty teenager. She shouted as loudly as she could that I was an idiot by being interested only in electronics, and now this. She did not want to understand that I had created the electronic equipment and speakers at work in my spare time, and it did not cost a lot of money. When she put her mind to something she did not want to like, there would be no way for her to change her opinion. You are wasting the money you should spend on your family and children. You should think first your priorities. Alas, I was interested in music, singing, painting, appreciating the beautiful things of life, and was not a simple-minded, uncivilized person who would never appreciate the finer things just the way she expected me to become. Seemingly, the person she was married to had to be someone giving orders to her, eating German sausages, drinking heavily, and interested only in working with his hands, as in the cleaning or building industry. That was how she was brought up, and expected it to continue for the rest of her life. The man in her life needed not to have any interests or hobbies, wanting only to know the truth, as the witnesses understood, just to please her. In my case, I was apparently too thick to follow the godly advice. Probably it meant that I was an extraordinarily ignoramus, unable to obey the rules issued by followers of the only truth, as often preached about. Magda, for some unclear reason, and perhaps unknowingly, was attempting to take the role of an authoritarian over me, and it was not working. She was not giving me a chance to be me, with my interests, and demanding me to dance to every command she issued. It felt as if I was choking within the slime of uncertainties, and unsure how this family unit could function in the long run. However, old Ben and his sons at BJD Electronics were very helpful. I was very happy to have met them, assisting in their electronics workshop. For a while I even assisted them in a storeman's position. When I built my floor-standing large speakers, I used Jensen drivers, and with a few creative design changes, they were exciting to listen to. It was like a feast for these golden ears. But in Magda's presence, it was impossible to enjoy them. Every time I attempted to listen to my favorite music, she threw tantrums, or engaged in lecturing me about my thoughtless behavior of not caring for my family's needs by wasting my efforts and money on mundane interests. When asked why she reacted to my interests in music this way, she would occasionally add that she was concerned that I was spending more time on electronics, and it was taking my attention from the most important things of life, i.e., serving Jehovah. Hopefully, this will give you some idea about what one had to put up with such a dedicated and faithful servant of God. I knew by now that I had to put myself in an awful state from which one had to break away in order to survive, and give a chance for the other to excel in her own way, as dictated by the witnesses. The only problem was welfare of the children. Then again, as several friends suggested, I should be patient, and things would be perfectly all right. But knowing what I did, I had my doubts. When she was heavily pregnant, I put her behavior being due to her health condition, and after the child was born, we had some form of peace, but only for a short time. She was now forced to spend more time at home with the children, cooking and cleaning, etc., leaving no time for kingdom interests. We changed our dwelling again to a more peaceful part of the neighborhood in another weatherboard house. I continued with my interests as well as spending a lot more time with my children and Magda. I even purchased a better quality Super 8mm film camera and used it to document most of our children's growth, even their first steps. In addition, I was experimenting in creating my first documentaries about the beginnings of the universe and space travel, for this subject greatly interested me. I was already lecturing, mainly on subjects I specialized in, and doing part-time jobs like, for example, working in the Creative Meyer store's window display department. When Magda saw the results of my filming and seeing Birgit's birth and further development, she appeared very happy about it, but such joy was not going to last long, and she would find all kinds of excuses to downgrade me. If filming our babies when changing their nappies, it would be regarded a great sin, for the images presented would display their naked bodies. Can such treasured memories of one's family be a sign of bad morals? Maybe Jehovah's Witnesses have an answer for that also.